Thank you for listening to a Vietnam podcast by 7 Million Bikes. We share the stories of people with a love for Vietnam. My name's Niall Mackay and I'm your host. I've lived in Vietnam since 2016 and first started this podcast to know more about the interesting people that live in Saigon, a crazy, bustling, energetic city. As the show has grown, we now talk to people from all over the world who have a Vietnam story to share. While we are getting ready to share Season 8 with you, this is an extra special PodSwap with our friends at Creators in Vietnam. We actually share a long history with their show since before each of our podcasts started. I was lucky enough to be a guest recently and finally meet their hosts in person, Tue-Si and Moni. They've graciously allowed me to share this episode with you. I've been asked several times whether I'd ever be a guest on my own show, and the answer is no, mostly because I like to share other people's stories. You'll learn a little bit about me if you've listened to enough episodes, or a lot about me. But in my interview with Creators in Vietnam, you get to hear more about behind the scenes of 7 Million Bikes and the thought process behind what I do and how I do it, and how I went from the bullied, shy kid into a stand-up comedian and podcast host. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let me know what you think, and thanks again to Creators in Vietnam for sharing my story and letting me share it with you. Enjoy!
This is Creators in Vietnam with Tue-Si and Moni. We aim to inspire you on your journey by interviewing creative entrepreneurs across Vietnam who make a positive impact on their community and their own lives. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Today we finally have a chance to meet Niall, the person behind the scenes of 7 Million Bikes. He shares with us how he found the courage to get on stage and start stand-up comedy in Vietnam, and how he has the superpower to make the most out of any situation and think positive at all times. I'm sure his story will inspire you to just get started on your passion, no matter how big is the fear, for real growth. Welcome back to Creators in Saigon. Today, Moni hosting with my co-host here, Tue-Si.
Yay, hello.
And Niall from 7 Million Bikes. Hello, Niall.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have you here. So Niall is from 7 Million Bikes that provides English entertainment through podcasts, comedy shows, and events in Vietnam. So I'm very excited to hear about your story, how you do all of those things in Saigon. I'm amazed. At least
yeah,
me.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming. I've heard about you for about a year now. We've all you have your podcast, and we have Creators in Vietnam now, and Dana always talked about you, and I was like, oh, who is this Niall? And so it's great to have you today.
No, I'm excited to be on. So I kind of mentioned before, we have a history with Creators in Vietnam. Me and Dana met. We were just talking way back early 2019, we randomly connected on one of the expat groups with a shared interest in podcasts, and neither of us had started, and we met and we had a beer and we were just kind of talking podcasting. I could see how dedicated she was, as you probably know.
Yes.
She had folders and all this research and stuff, and I was like, I have a microphone, I'm just gonna start talking. So everyone's different, and so some people are very, very well organized. I'm maybe not the most. No, I'm organized, but I'm more just let's get it done.
Yeah.
So we connected way back then. So it was exciting that we just said that we started May 2019. You guys started September 2019. And at that point, there was 2019. There was, I don't know if you know, there was a flourish of podcasts all at once. So at the time, the only one that I could see that was in English language was the Saigoneer podcast, which had been going for a while and is still going. And then I started, and then Dana started, and then there was Falling Jackfruit, which I don't think is still continuing. And there was a couple others. So just suddenly, around 2019, it was that parallel thinking where suddenly everyone was like, let's do a podcast.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because it's such a nice channel to show actually what you are interested in. So before we go into actually how you started this podcast, I really would like to learn more about you. About Niall, who grew up in Glasgow. What made you become who you are today? Really, this doer who want to do so many things at once. So tell us, Niall, how it all started.
So really, to be honest, Yeah, I like the question. Summer camp. I went to an American summer camp and it changed my life. Absolutely. So I was bullied in high school, bullied in primary school, really shy, really introverted, to the point where I remember the day I started university, we had a big kind of icebreakers and all of this stuff. And they were like, oh, you're going to do like a performance piece. This is your group and you have to perform. And I was just like, I wanted to throw up at the thought of performing. Like I had to go and speak to the lecturer like quietly, and I was like, I can't do this. Like I don't want to do it. And she's like, it's okay, just you help your group. You don't need to perform. So I was like the only one in the group who didn't get up and do whatever. It was just like a silly performance thing, you know. And other people like, yeah, let's come on, we're gonna do this, and they're all excited. And I was like, just so to me, like I kind of forget if I go all the way back. The thought of being up in front of people made me want to throw up, and I couldn't physically do it. Yeah. And then near the end of university, I went to a summer camp in America, which is quite a common thing in Europe. It's like a company called Camp America, and you get placed and you go for a summer in America.
I know. So like for others to know, it's like a camp where you help out and get paid for it?
Yeah. So it's a full job. Yeah, you get paid. You can do anything. I was a football coach in inverted commas because it wasn't really like coaching. It was just like, here's a ball, go and kick it. But I was the football coach. But going to America like literally changed my life because, as you guys will know, Americans, they're just so outgoing. They're so friendly. They're so lovely. They're so encouraging. They are the most positive people on the planet. But also coupled with that, this camp was just a beautiful place. It's still like a special place in my heart. It's kind of this place where the kid who would be bullied at school would be best friends with the coolest kid. At this summer camp, everyone was equal. Yeah. And I would see that. I would watch like this kid who would be like, the cool kid. He's like really good looking and all of this. And everyone loves him. And he'd take the like kid that was a bit weird and a bit strange, like, and they'd be best friends. So it was like that. It was just this summer camp was just a beautiful, beautiful place. So I ended up doing that for 5 summers, but I mean, almost instantly, like it changed my life because suddenly I gained confidence. Suddenly you're encouraged to perform and things like this. So I ended up starting doing like getting on stage and playing guitar, and you have to do like little skits and performances and things like this in front of like 300 kids and stuff. And because it's kids as well, you just drop your neuroses or whatever. Just gonna do it, because you want to entertain and you want to have fun with the campers. So that literally is probably what put me on the trajectory to now where I'm doing a podcast and doing comedy shows and things like this.
Oh, wow. I can imagine that when you go to a camp where is not your usual surrounding, basically you can start new, kind of. So in school, I imagine your classmates know you, and I've been there as well, and we get shy. But then when you are in that environment of being in a camp, you are not the shy Neil who is not on stage. What was that different nudge that you had?
That's a good point. I think because you lose all that baggage, right? Because like you say, all your friends know you. And I've still got my best friends that I grew up with are still my best friends to this day. And I still talk to them all the time. So those guys are amazing. I love those guys. So it was never my core group of friends. But yeah, you lose all that baggage from everyone who knows you of being bullied or the stupid things you've done or whatever or whatnot. I think it's just that kind of, you can just start afresh without that baggage.
You can shed those insecurities a little bit.
Yeah.
Really authentically a little bit. Yeah. I can vibe with that, definitely.
And when was the moment when you start to implement that, what you feel and learn in the camp, into your everyday life, to actually grow as a person, to grow beyond that shy kid?
We'll be right back. Join pilot and adventurer Fernando Pino as he takes you on journeys to discover exciting destinations across the UK and Europe. You'll fly with him to hidden gems and experience local culture, from bustling streets to serene hideaways and the best places to eat, sleep, and play. Travel Plans is more than a podcast. It's your ticket to exploring the world and its history with a friend. In this episode, we are flying to discover a beachside paradise perfect for the whole family. Discover golden sands, activities galore, and even free childcare so you get your own break too. Why am I still here?
Yeah, I mean, it was almost immediate. I remember I came back from that first summer and I was like a different person. And you guys have probably experienced this as well, being from different countries. When you first leave your home country and then you go back and you want to tell your friends everything that you've done and all these crazy experiences. Yeah. And I remember coming back and they just didn't give a fuck, you know. Like,
they don't have the
swearing. I don't know if we can swear. I don't swear too often. But so I came back and they're not interested, you know. You want to tell them everything and they want to talk about what happened at the football on the weekend. They want to talk about how drunk they got. And that's fine. Like I said, I'm still best friends with these guys, but it was a massive kind of slap in the face when you get so excited to come back. But so immediately I was kind of more confident, more outgoing, a totally different outlook on life. You know?
Yeah, travel does that. Like, it changes your perspective. And then I feel that I left very young when I was 19. And every time I would go back to France, I would literally see people stuck in the past or like not moving, because it's always the same, like, you know, habits, it's the same routines, and then you come back with all those new experience, but they don't have that perspective. So they go like, yeah, that's not that interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you saw what happened on TV yesterday, and they're like, oh.
Yeah, like I was shocked when I got back and they were talking about like the reality TV show last night and things like that. I'm like, I just went to summer camp and met all these people from across the world, and we just did this and we did that, and I went windsurfing, and I thought I was going to find a dead body in the water. That's another story. Like, you know, like so you've got all these things that have happened to you in a short amount of time. They're like, did you see Big Brother last night? Chantel got kicked off, and I don't know who the hell Chantel is, but okay, you know. So
the time of Big Brother.
Big Brother, yeah.
I mean, I loved Big Brother when I was younger. Don't get me wrong, but you get to a point where you're like.
It was actually like it was reality TV when I left to Canada and I came back. Everybody was just talking about Love Story, and it was Love Story for it. It was so bad. Anyway, yeah, good stuff.
And how did you find the people you actually can relate to more? Because I think that you traveled a lot as well. Where the journey took you after the camps?
To kind of follow on from what your point is and what you're talking about. It's meeting these people, right? It's just amazing. And so I don't want to like put down someone who hasn't left their home country and who, as I said, many of my friends as well. But like right now I'm sitting with a French Vietnamese, Hungarian Vietnamese in Saigon, and the amount of people that I meet from different cultures, countries, races, I'm amazed at the amount of people that I've met from all over the world and that I talk to through the podcast as well, which is nice. And then I think about these people who've never really left their home country, and you've met the same people. So I talk about this a lot. I'm very aware that I'm a very white person and that I come from a very white background. Most of the people I knew were all Anglo-Saxon white people with a few Indians and a few Pakistanis. But apart from that, I'm from a very white culture. So I'm very aware of that. But then I think about my people I grew up with. Like, I don't know, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but are they aware of that they're very white, you know, because they're still in this very white environment. Whereas I feel very lucky that I've traveled the world and I've met people from all over, you know, which does give you that travel, that perspective, broadens the horizons and makes you more aware of the world and things like that. I don't want to use the word woke, but makes you become a bit more woke, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think it allows you to, depending on how, because I've seen a lot of people traveling in Australia, for example, but it's just the beginnings of backpacking, and it doesn't bring that level of like emotional maturity that comes with traveling. But I think it comes later on with a few travels, with a few actual, because traveling is not always beautiful. It's actually the problems that happen during travels that really forge that character, that personality, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
It's those deep problems that later on becomes really good memories. Like, fuck, I went like, you know, you don't talk about like the nice time. You talk about, shit, I got lost in Cambodia and I ended up in that forest and I survived. And those are the moments that really forges you, I think.
Absolutely, 110%. Because I know it's kind of like you realize it later on how much you romanticize these things. So my best example, so I actually lived in New York City for like 5 months one time. Random story, that's a whole nother episode. Now, when I think about my time in New York City and when I tell people about it, I have nothing but amazing things to say. And I'm like, oh my God, it was so amazing. And then I remember it was the worst time of my life. Literally like the worst time of my life. Like day to day, I was so broke at one point. I was eating onion and lettuce sandwiches. I moved there for a girl. She broke up with me. I was meant to have a job, but didn't work out. So I was like the ghetto pretty much one night. One night I had to sleep in this apartment that I didn't even know who owned it. Some friend was like, oh, they've got a spare bed. There was cat hair everywhere. It was way out in like it was the train that took you there was the Jay-Z line, which, because that's where Jay-Z was from, was at the end of this line. And I got there and it's like something out of a movie. It's like dark at night.
Yeah.
Again, I'm the only white person. I'm this wee skinny white guy from Scotland walking down the street. So, you know, but I never really think about that. I was like, I lived in New York. It was amazing. I had so much fun. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was the worst time of your life. But like you're saying, then you just, it makes you grow as a person and things like that. And there's so many experiences from traveling like that.
Yeah. Those are the best time.
Yeah.
This is why we're so lucky in Saigon, right? Because there is a difference between, we're all, in my peer group and probably yours as well, right? We're all kind of expats. We've all left our home country. Like, we're all the same.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a couple of Vietnamese friends, but the majority of my friends are all travelers, expats, come from somewhere else. So you've all got that perspective, which is pretty different.
Yeah. It's a nice perspective.
Yeah.
I worked with international schools when I was in Canada for 10 years, and I was in that environment the whole time. It's true that there is something about traveling that definitely reconnects you with the present moment. Naturally, you have to live in the present moment. And so I think that's why we shed those insecurities. And that's why I think even when you came to Vietnam, you were attracted to not certainly a country, but mostly to same personalities, to people that were vibing the same. And I think that's why we all end up close to touting.
Yeah, also like there's a difference when we travel, like, you know, you just like a weekend travel and stuff like that. But what we talk about really is the deep experience of living somewhere else for a period of time. Yeah. That's when our insecurities somehow they just emerge and challenges come where you're like, I don't know if I can handle this. And that's the growth that we are all been through. And I think that's what reaches our perspective in our life. Yeah. So, Niall, the next question will be, what brought you to Vietnam?
A plane.
Yes. Good
Simple.
one.
I'm sorry.
There was a car before that.
No, so my wife and I came here in 2015 for a holiday and to visit her sister and her husband. And so we traveled the length of Vietnam. We went everywhere from Sapa down to the Mekong Delta, everywhere in between, over about 2.5 weeks. And we just, you know, fell in love with the place, as everyone does. Most people, not everyone, but most people do. And we went back home to New Zealand, which is our home actually. And that weekend, we just sought out Vietnamese food. And we lived there for like 2.5 years, and we didn't realize there was like a Vietnamese restaurant on nearly every corner because we'd never been looking for it. And suddenly it was like, oh, there's one there. Oh, there's another one. Oh, wait, what? So we spent that weekend just like going to all these Vietnamese restaurants, drinking Vietnamese coffee. Even one place had ba 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 beer.
Oh, wow.
But it was like $8 New Zealand dollars for a ba 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 beer, which is like, it's 50. It's just ridiculous amount of, it's like 120,000 dong for a ba 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 beer. We knew they were like 15,000 dong. So we were like, right, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But so pretty much from that moment, we were like, well, I'd never really been to Southeast Asia. That, I think Vietnam was my first time. I'd been to Bali before that once for my honeymoon. I should remember that. And then we came to Vietnam, but I hadn't really traveled around Southeast Asia. My wife had a little bit. She'd been to China and things like that. So we're like, right, let's plan a year's trip away. So we saved for a year. And then we're like, right, let's see how long the money can last. We'll do a teaching certification so we have that in our back pocket. We'll travel and we'll teach. And then when we come back to New Zealand, we can volunteer to teach English, you know, because we'll go back to our normal jobs and things like this. So we did a month in Thailand, a month in Malaysia, got to Vietnam to do our CELTA certification. So our plan was to be here for 6 weeks. So 4 weeks for the course, 1 week before, 1 week after, and then continue on. But we met this amazing bunch of people doing the course that some of them are still friends with to this day. And then through the course, you kind of automatically get offered a job. That's kind of like why they offer the course, right? But also, we were really naive. We kind of had this notion that we were just going to like get a certification and then go teach on the beach somewhere or something like that, you know, like just kind of travel around Thailand and we'll teach for a couple of weeks. And now I feel like that's just such a naive, selfish point of view as well, because for the students' point of view, that's just not helpful at all to like, it's just this great white savior complex that you're just going to show up and be like, I'm going to teach for a couple of weeks and move on. So when we started looking for jobs, everything was like a 6-month contract minimum. Most of it was a year's contract. And I was like, Adri, this is like a real job.
Oh my God, English teaching is a real job.
Yeah.
Can you believe this?
No, it's so naive. Like, I feel so bad about it. So most of the decisions in my life have happened just kind of naturally, and I've never really had to decide anything, and you just go with the flow and it's always worked out. But this was one moment where we had to make a decision. So we had to sit down, and we even talked with our friends and stuff like, do we accept a job here in Vietnam, which was like a year's contract, or do we continue on traveling? And then that's going to lead back to our life in New Zealand, or what are we going to do? And that was a big decision. We normally just go with the flow, but this was one where we had to be like, what do we do? And it was really difficult. It took like quite a while, and eventually like, okay, look, let's not sign a full-time contract. We'll start on a part-time contract. Yeah. If we like it, because we'd never taught before, right? We'd just done the training. If we like it, we'll, continue on. Because we wanted to teach adults as well, but it was teaching kids, and we're like, I want to teach kids, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we did it. We absolutely loved it, even though, again, this was terrifying. My first ever class I taught, I wanted to run away at the break time. I went into the toilet, and I sat on the toilet, and I was like, not like with my pants down, with like my pants on, sat on the toilet, and I was like, what am I doing? I cannot do this. I had a class of 19 kids, and I was like, should I just leave? Yeah. Should I just like text them and be like, I can't do this? Like, it was that traumatic. But I went back, I did it, and it was fine. We ended up loving it. So we ended up signing the full-time contract, which became a year. Then we ended up signing another contract, which became 2 years. Then I got a job as the community network manager, which is more my career is in charities and fundraising, things like this. So that became another 2 years. Wow. Then 7 million bikes became a thing. And now for a country, we came here for 6 weeks, and we're now in our 6th year here. But that seems like a pretty common thing for many people. If you speak to them, they're like, I came for a holiday, and like 20 years later, they're still here. So that's probably going to be us as well.
Yeah. So you're here for the long run now, I guess. You still don't know. You're like, oh no, another 6 months.
Well, no, we are here for the long run now. The difficult thing with Vietnam, as you know, is they don't offer a path to residency. So I know people who've been here for 10 years still having to renew their visas every year. Like we were in New Zealand. We are permanent residents of New Zealand, and we lived there for 3 years. Yeah. So we were able to immediately, as soon as we got there was a path to residency. And, we had to, do all the legal framework and all of that to become permanent residents, but there's a pathway. Whereas here in Vietnam, this is what I've figured out why, if you ever speak to anyone, like, are you going to live here forever? Nobody can say yes if you're not, unless you're married to a Vietnamese person. Yeah. Because there's no pathway to living here, unfortunately. Which I think hopefully they will change eventually.
It's in the brink of changing, I think.
Oh, really?
In some way, or like hopefully, because they're opening to the world. But it's true that Southeast Asia doesn't have a history of immigration in any sense. So they're like, immigrants? What is that? Like, or people coming in and they wanting to stay, and they don't even have a retirement visa.
I was just about to say, I learned this recently, like they don't have a retirement visa, which apparently is a common kind of thing. Which
in Thailand they have one.
Thailand, right? You're like, you've got loads of money and you want to come spend it. Yeah, come retire here. Like, come spend your retirement money.
But then countries like Australia, Canada, New Zealand are made a lot on like immigrant labor, really. Yeah. So they have all those systems in place where you can get in like express entry and all those things. Which city were you in New Zealand?
Wellington.
Oh, beautiful city.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. If I wasn't in Vietnam, I think I would be in New Zealand at this point. I've loved it.
So I hated Vietnam at first when we lived here. The first year we were here, I hated it. I couldn't wait to go back to New Zealand. I was literally counting down the days. I was like saying to my wife, I was like, can we just leave? Can we? And she's like, no, stick it out. Come on, a little bit longer. I was like, no, let's just go home. I want to go back to New Zealand. I missed it so much. Like literally on a daily basis. I've never had a love for a place like I have New Zealand and Wellington. It was like, this is where I want to go back to. But over time, Vietnam gets you, right? And so after like a year or so.
So what was the turning point?
I can't even remember a specific turning point, to be honest.
I'm just trying to imagine this, like Neil waking up, looking out the windows, like all these bikes. Oh my God, like so loud, it's dirty and everything. And you just like don't like to be here.
Yeah, I hated everything about it because, we lived in District 4, which that was probably one of the turning points was getting out of District 4. So we loved it, the experience that it was, but living anywhere but D4 really pretty much is like So, expats get so much shit for living in Tue-Si and stuff like that. And I've got like my own thoughts on that, which goes to like, you think about even around the world where you have Little Italy, or you have like the Greek town, or you have Chinatown. Immigrants, and we are all immigrants, live together. They form their own communities, and you don't like talk shit about all the Chinese people going to live together in Chinatown, or the Italians gathering. You're like, yeah, that's what you do. But for some reason, people here like to be like, oh, Tue-Si where all the expats live. It's like, yeah, that's like what immigrants do. They find each other because they need to have a sense of community with people that they speak the same language. Like, I lived in Australia, and I met like people that had immigrated from Greece like 50 years ago that still couldn't speak English.
In Canada is the same.
Yeah, right? It's not
Portuguese
like a problem.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, this is just it's the second generation, right? That speak the language and that integrate more. Anyway, this is a whole nother thing.
It's a whole bigger story.
Yeah. Actually, that's why I wasn't even going to bring it up.
I think there is a level of discomfort that you get. Like, traveling or going to settle in another country is already very discomfortable.
Yeah.
So like it makes sense that you want to bond with your community. I think back in the days when we talk about those people, it's more so they didn't have a choice. Some of them were refugees, so they went to where they knew. And maybe the criticism that we have with expats here is like, you have a choice because you come with a comfortable living, but you still make the choice to I guess it's a privilege to live in a comfortable area like this. I think that might be the small criticism, but that's a whole different discussion.
I think we shouldn't criticize anyone for want to feel at home. And if this is where you feel at home, then Tue-Si is a place where you feel at home. Also like the other Vietnamese or Chinese communities outside of China and Vietnam, they also feel more at home if they are forming a community.
Like Houston, Texas, right? There's a massive Vietnamese community, and they all. I mean, I've interviewed people from like Tam Le, and she's like, yeah, I mean, my dentist was Vietnamese. Like like we hung out with Vietnamese people.
The Texas community is huge. I'm part of them, but like it's. I mean, I'm part. I was doing leadership camps, but like the reason why they went to Texas is because the weather is exactly the same.
Right. That's what
it's so cute. When you get there, it's Vietnam. It's really interesting.
Hot and steamy.
So it's completely fine, I think. And then you try to have that real Vietnamese experience by moving to D4.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to be like... So I remember when we first came here, we met someone who shall remain nameless, and he's like, lived in D7, and he's like, you live in D4? Why? I would never live anywhere but D7. And we were like, ugh, we live in D4. It's authentic, you know. and that wasn't the reason, but partly that was the reason. And I do not regret living there. It was amazing. I could never go back there though. D4 is dirty. It's loud. It's noisy. We had a school across the road from us that would wake up at 6 a.m. every morning. And, we were teachers, so we had a different schedule. So we weren't waking up at 6 a.m., but we were woken up at 6 a.m. Then we moved to another building where we didn't realize they hadn't finished the building. So a few weeks after we moved in, they started finishing the roof. So we had construction for like months above us, next to us, like drills, hammering, like it was... So all of that stuff grinds you down. That's why I didn't like it, basically. It was like noisy, dirty.
Yeah. And then to put it in perspective, like you've been here for 6 years, and I think Vietnam has changed a lot too.
Oh, massively.
I think in 2015-16 there was construction everywhere. There's still construction everywhere.
Still construction everywhere.
There's that curse of the construction. Do you realize this? Every time today is a good day, but usually every time we start a podcast or anything like this outside of my place, there is construction.
But the other thing, sorry, just to go back to the whole Tue-Si and expat things as well, it's like there's Vietnamese people that live here as well. And there's also Japanese, Indian, Korean. Like,
so I wanted to ask you a question because like the energy in Wellington is very different from the one here in Saigon. I mean, have you been to New Zealand before?
Not yet, but I heard of it.
Yeah, New Zealand, like picture the quiet part of the Lord of the Rings, and that's literally the energy that is there. Like it's just good vibes. And so how was the transition? I mean, you said that you didn't like it. But so how do you see now that craziness of Vietnam, and how do you equate it to Wellington?
Well, you can't equate it. It's so different. I mean, but like anything, right, there's pros and cons. So we loved Wellington, but at the same time, it's at the arse end of the world, right? It's far away from anywhere as possible. My wife's from America, I'm from Scotland. So to get home is like a 2-day event just to get there, and then a 2-day event back. So if you want to go home, that's 4 days of just traveling, right? also as well, like everything closes at 5 o'clock in Wellington.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Like the city shuts down.
I've never been in a city like that, but
Yeah, so it's like, what do we do now? It's just kind of like, the restaurants and bars would obviously be open, but you're not doing that every night. It's super expensive as well.
Yeah.
This sounds like such an old man thing, but like at one point, because tomatoes are seasonal, the price of tomatoes would go up to like $10 a kilo.
Oh shit, yeah.
You know what I mean? And avocados would be like $5 for one avocado. Again, romanticize that, oh my God, Wellington is the most beautiful place in the world. It's got its challenges, right? And it's kind of like, you can't really get anywhere. It's in this harbour. The south of Wellington is the Cook Strait. So the south of Wellington is the South Island. So if you want to go south, you've got to get on a plane or a ferry to go there. If you want to go north, you've got to go over the Rim of Tucker, so you've got to have a car or you've got to fly. So it's got its own challenges as well. And what we loved about Saigon is the energy. Things are open. Life is on the street here. There's always a buzz. There's always things happening. There's always things going on. So that's kind of, I guess, where the transition came, is like we just love the energy, and we're very social people. We like to go out. We like to hang out. We like to be doing things. And so, that's kind of where that transition of I love Saigon, I guess. Into it. And that's where then the podcast came in, was kind of like starting to accept, I guess, that we lived here and accept that like this is our home now, and then starting to just love everything about it and love the people. And then that's where then the podcast came from that.
Yeah, I think we all have to go through that transition period to get used to a new place. And what actually encouraged you to actually start a podcast and talk about what you are talking about? Because your topics are very broad as well, what I see. But I want to hear from you, really.
It started from boredom, right? So what it was, my wife and I had almost the exact same schedule, and we're a very strange couple that we really like hanging out with each other. So some couples can be really independent. We are like really just hang out with each other all the time, and we really enjoy each other's company. And so schedules changed. I had Sunday off, and she worked on a Sunday, and most of my friends worked on a Sunday as well. So I had nothing to do, and then we got Biscuit, but as you can see, she just sleeps all day. So I was just really bored on a Sunday, and the thing was as well, you know what it's like in Saigon, right? The only thing to do a lot of the time is go out and drink. And I didn't want to do that, because I could have easily gone out and be like, I'll meet you in a bar and stuff. But I consciously didn't suggest to people like, hey, let's go meet in a bar, or hang out, because one, my wife would finish work at like 6 or 7, and then I'd be wasted by that time probably, which is no fun, right? So I was bored. I wanted a hobby basically. And I loved podcasting. I'd always loved podcasting since I was in university. Really, the start of podcasting was like Ricky Gervais. I don't know if you know the Ricky Gervais, Carl Pilkington, Stephen Merchant. They are like the pod fathers, as I call them. And as you know, podcasting, it's got a low barrier to entry. You just need a microphone at its most basic, depending how much you want to get involved. And so I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And then learning more about the interesting people that lived here. And one of the things I realized was, when you are a teacher yourself, you only kind of meet other teachers, but you start to realize that a lot of them have, like everyone has layers, right? And have much. So I was meeting people like that were making stuff from leather. They were comedians, musicians. They weren't just a teacher, and so I wanted to get to know people on that deeper level. So I'd met J.K. Hobson, who's a well-known comedian here. And right away I was like, I want to know more about him, because he'd been in a thrash metal band back in like the day and stuff, like a pretty well-known thrash metal band. He had big dreadlocks, and then now he was a comedian, but again he was an English teacher. So a massive chunk of them are English teachers, but we never talk about that, because it's just like, that's not like what I want to talk about. Like, tell me more about
a side job.
You. So anyway, I interviewed J.K. Hobson, and then from there it just kind of, I remember then I was reading my phone, I was reading The Guardian, and there was an article about digital nomads in Saigon, written by this guy called Greg Lee. So I looked him up, found him. He was in Saigon. He was a digital nomad, contacted him, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this new podcast. Do you want to be on? So he came on, and then it just kind of like spiraled from there, I guess.
Wow.
Oh, nice. So you just like randomly pick people that you are interested in and have a talk.
Basically, yeah.
And how did you evolve like from there? So first was the podcast, and then later on you started to do comedy shows. how did that came?
Yeah, well, so comedy is just something I'd always loved, like my whole life, and doing stand-up comedy was something I'd wanted to do for years. I always say I wanted to do it for 7 years. So for about 7 years before I did comedy, my wife and I, we would always go to comedy shows. We both of us have always loved stand-up comedy since we met. And, you know, I'd go to shows and I'd be like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be up there. I want to, like, you know, and I'd be doing bits in my head. And it got to the point when we were in New Zealand, we would go to open mic nights. I had stuff written down in my pocket and I could not get on stage. Like, I just couldn't do it. So even though by this point I was more confident in myself, I did public speaking. I would go out to events for my job and do public speaking in front of hundreds of people, no problem. But doing stand-up comedy was like a step too far. I just could not do it.
So the shy boy came back.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my stomach was like, I just was like, I can't do it. My wife, and she's so encouraging. She's like, "Oh, you can do it." I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So we'd go to these shows and we'd just watch and I wouldn't do it. And then Saigon, same thing happened in the beginning. And part of the reason with 7 Million Bikes, we provide entertainment because we remember when we first got here, we could never find anything to do. It's really difficult. Again, you're in a new country, new environment, a new language as well. So you end up just drinking beer half the time because there's nothing else to do, right? Like, well, come on, we'll go drink beer. But then someone started putting on shows at Emergency Room. We were just talking to Matt Ryan just a couple of days ago. Matt Ryan, your Indica and Union Jacks, he had a bar called Emergency Room back in the day, just down at Pasteur Street. Really, really fun bar. So they started doing open mic nights. So again, as soon as we saw that, we started going to them, watching them. And then the comedy scene started kind of flourishing here in Saigon. So then there was like Saigon Funny People came along, who J.K. Hobson was part of. They were putting on shows. And then it was Ben Betterby and Comedy Saigon. And so comedy was starting to become a bigger thing here in Saigon. And so obviously my interest was piqued again and was going to these shows. And I was like, I want to do this. So again, got to the stage where I started telling my friend and telling Adrian. So I started writing stuff down, started thinking a bit. And we went to Indica for a Monday night open mic, which has just restarted. I had a bit in my pocket and there was about 4 people there that night. And so Angie, who was a host, got up. She did some comedy. I think one other person came up. And then Angie got back up and she's like, well, this is our show. Like, there's no one else is here. Does anyone else want to come up? You know, like just kind of open, because it's open mic. And so that was like me. I was like, I do. Yeah, I'll do it. I had the bits in my pocket. So I got up, told my first joke, then completely forgot what I was going to say. So I had to get my notes out immediately. But, open mic, it's okay to do that. So I did my 5 minutes and it went pretty well. People laughed. And then that was just once I'd broken that barrier, that was me just like hooked, So the first few times I did that, I remember wanting to throw up. I was so terrified. It was the most nerve-wracking thing in my life. I remember it was the second or third show I did. I was sitting there like just tapping my foot and like just feeling horrible. And but I do always like to kind of push myself. I do like to try new things, like going to the summer camp and things like that. Like I'm not scared to throw myself out there. So even if I feel like shit and it feels horrible, I'm open to just doing it anyway. So then it's just like anything, the more you do it, you becomes easier. But after this lockdown, we hadn't done any comedy in person for like 5 months. So when I did my first in-person comedy show at Indica again, open mic night, my knee was like kind of shaking and I was still a bit really nervous. But then you just gotta keep doing it.
I really admire stand-up comedians because I had a friend in Amsterdam who was starting in stand-up comedy, and I see on him and I know from him that how nerve-wracking is the whole experience, and at the beginning it's hard to be natural even. So how's your growth process in terms of stand-up comedy? What did you do to actually keep improving yourself?
You just have to keep performing. It's the number one thing. So we were doing comedy shows online during lockdown. I had a friend from Canada perform called Lars Kallio, who he was on the podcast way back. He was in Vietnam at the time doing stand-up comedy. He came on to this online comedy show that we did, and he was just so funny. But without even doing anything, he was just so funny, and I was just in awe watching him. And so afterwards I was like, how did you do that? And he's just like, I've performed like 25,000 times in my career, because he's been doing it for like 20 years. But it was like thousands and thousands of times, and he's like, you just have to perform. That's the biggest thing. When I'm regularly performing, when shows are on and when I have the time as well, you just get up on stage and you just own the stage. And it's, but then now, like I said, I hadn't performed on stage for 5 months. So when I got back up, I didn't really get many laughs. It was pretty bad. My timing was all off. My knee was shaking. So it's just practice. Wow. Like it really is.
So what's your count right now?
What's what?
Your count? Like
how many am I up to? 135. I keep count.
135 stand-up. Physical?
No, that includes online as well. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I do keep count, actually, every time I do a show, I write it down. I take notes of what I've said as well, so I can remember what I've said. 138 we're up to.
Wow, 138 in the span of how long?
Since 2019, so it's not that many.
Wow,
yeah,
well done.
2 years, so that's... I don't perform as much as I should.
138 in 2 years, that's pretty good already, no?
Some people will be a lot more.
Yeah, I heard from other podcasts as well.
I'm so inspired right
crazy amount.
I find it difficult to balance podcast and comedy.
So actually, do you bring in some of that comedy in the podcast, and do you bring some?
Not really. No.
You try to keep it very segregated.
I don't try and keep it segregated, but it's just two different things. And I remember talking to someone about this a long time ago, and they were like, "You can be multifaceted. Don't pigeonhole yourself." And that really stuck with me. I was like, "Oh." Yeah, they were like, you can be a comedian and you can be a podcaster. They don't need to be the same.
Yeah.
So that really helped me. So the podcast, some of them are so emotional and so deep.
Yeah.
So I just be myself. So if I come across as funny, then that's good. But I don't try and do jokes and things like this. But I am starting a new podcast soon that's going to be comedy related.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Do we have a name already?
Yeah, we do. It's called Did That Really Happen?
Oh, I
see. So I've already lined up the first few guests. So I'm going to play a comedian's joke. Well, they're going to give me one of their jokes. And then I'm going to ask them, did that really happen?
I see.
And if the answer is yes, then they explain what was the real story behind the joke. And if the answer is no, well, then they just explain how they came up with that joke. I would hear comedians, and you've probably heard comedians tell these things on stage that are just so ridiculous.
And you're wondering.
Right? Like, did that really happen?
That's a good premise.
And so often I would then ask comedians if I met them. I remember even in New Zealand, met this comedian after his show. I was not doing comedy, just watching. And I was literally like, did that really happen? And he's like, yeah. And then he tells you the story about whatever it was, I can't remember. And J.K. Hobson had the same thing as well. Even to this day, when I see my friends do comedy, and I'll be like, after the show, like, did that really happen? It's like, yeah, how could I make that up? Like, literally, how could I make that up? And I'm like, wow. So that's what comedians do. We take what happens in real life to all of us, and then we're just able to tell it in a funny way.
So in one part, to be a good comedian, we know that practice, that's number one.
Practice for everything.
But as any artist, we always have to find our own style, our own voice, our way of doing it. And how you personally find your own style for stand-up comedy?
I'm still working on it. Yeah.
What would be your style?
Well, so it is an interesting question, and I think that's what held me back in the beginning, right? Because so you practice things in your head before it ever got on stage, and you're like, how is this going to sound? How am I going to sound on stage? Because I didn't want to sound like corny or cheesy or, like forced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like to be afraid of other people's judgment in that.
Are you a psychologist or something? Jesus. You asked me on to do a podcast and I'm getting a free psychologist.
Do you want to lie down?
Yeah, we got a couch here. I'll lie down. So I had some issues with my mum, and then that was, so I started doing comedy to get rid. But yeah, I guess you could say what did you say? Fear of being judged? Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I guess right.
I think it's every artist at the beginning. That's the biggest thing, that how other people would perceive our performance.
Not even an artist, just every human being. We're all scared of being judged, right? Every interaction we have, we're always kind of thinking about what people think of us.
When I'm hearing your story, and I'm feeling so inspired, because I started with public speaking too. I thought like public speaking was a good entry point to stand-up comedy, but I feel like stand-up comedy is that point of vulnerability that is the highest, because you're supposed to go deep into someone's laughter, you know, like if you can get that laugh, it's super sensitive.
The thing that makes stand-up comedy so different to any other kind of art is you need an immediate reaction. An immediate reaction. If I say something and you don't laugh or the audience doesn't laugh, it's the most awkward thing in the world. That's what's terrifying. If you're performing music, go and watch someone perform music. People clap at the end, right? But you don't need that. Like, they're not after every chorus, like, yeah, good job, you nailed that. You're like, you know what I mean? So with comedy, you just need the immediate reaction every time.
Super sensitive.
Talking about voice, that was what the biggest barrier was. I just realized my voice was just me, because Bill Hicks said it as well. You just have to be yourself because no one else can be you.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't worry about who you are on stage, just be yourself. And so, as you can tell, I'm a pretty affable, chatty person. I'm Scottish, you can't stop talking. So I think what the biggest thing is, and I see this in every new comic, right? They all just think that you need to get up on stage and tell a story. And that's what I did in the beginning. You just get up and this funny thing happened to me. But it's not funny to other people. And you need to have constant laughter throughout. To be a stand-up comedian, think of any comedian, you need joke. You need laughter. So in the beginning, I would probably tell more stories. And I remember seeing one person tell a 10-minute story with no jokes for one punchline, and the punchline wasn't funny. So you're listening for 10 minutes of every detail of this person's story. And in their head, they obviously think it's the best thing ever. And you're just sitting there like, this is terrible.
Wow,
so that's where you start to evolve your voice, as you start to realize, and getting advice from other comedians as well, is you need to tighten everything. You need to be economical with your words, and I'm still practice that. And now what you'll do is I'll go to open mic night with an idea, and you just kind of spew the idea out, and then maybe you'll take one line from this idea that you've spewed out, and it's that one line is the one that was funny, that got the laugh, and then you're like, okay, that's the joke. And sometimes the joke is not what you think it is. Sometimes I've done open mic nights where I've said something off the top of my head and it gets the biggest laugh. So I'm like, oh, that's the joke. And then what you do is you take all these little jokes, you put them all together. So then when you're going to do I did a headliner set online, which was meant to be in person, but I did an hour of comedy. And it was just an hour of these bits that are all kind of put together. So that's how you find your voice. But I'm still trying to find it because my hero is Bill Hicks and George Carlin, and they talk about deep and meaningful topics, like the governmental kind of level. Governmental level. Deep topics. But they make it funny, but they make you think, right?
I like
these comedians that really make you think. And that's who I wanted to be. I don't think that's the comedian I've been. But now, because of the anti-vaxxers and stuff like this, I'm starting to find my voice more about being pro-science and seeing so many idiots in the world these days. I'm now starting to get a bit more, angry. I don't know about angry, but a bit more starting to find willing to so use my comedic voice to make these points of view.
So learning what you are really passionate about in terms of topics, I think that's when, as a comedian, you're becoming more authentic because you start to speak up about things that you care about, and when your audience also start to relate with you as a human being, I think that's it's a really deep connection that you're gonna have with your audience.
Well, because when you go to a comedy show and a comedian says something that you're like, I was thinking that, but I didn't know how to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the goal. I don't know if I've ever gotten there yet. I think so with some little bits, but that's the goal. That's what you want. That's the most fun when you go to a comedy show and a comedian says something and you're like, I was thinking that, but I didn't know how to say it, or he said it in a different way. And then and that's when you relate with the comedian. That's the ultimate goal, I think, is what you want.
Yeah, it's such a hard job. Being authentic, but at the same time, being economical with your words, also thinking about whether people laugh or not laugh.
It's all practice.
Timing as well.
Yeah. Timing as well.
And so, has it happened that it went really, really bad?
Oh, yeah. Last week. Yeah, last week.
How did you handle that?
I've been able to just push through that. So, sometimes when you go to a comedy show and you see a comedian make a joke and it doesn't get a laugh, they can make it kind of awkward, when a comedian says oh, you didn't find that funny, or or maybe they look hurt, you know, so you feel for them, right? You're like, oh, that person now feels really bad, like, because we didn't laugh at the joke. That can make the whole experience for everyone kind of awkward. Because of my background in public speaking, I used to do face-to-face fundraising on the street in Australia, getting people to sign up for charity.
Yeah.
So I'm very used to rejection. Like 90% of that job is people walking by you and ignoring you. I learned to deal with that. You don't really care about it. So when my jokes don't get a laugh, I've kind of got this ability to just carry on.
I see.
And move to the next one and not let it linger too much.
Yeah.
So that's always kind of helped me. I'm never just like a deer in the headlights, like, oh, that didn't work. Oh, they didn't laugh. Or like, oh, why did you not understand that? You know what I mean? Like, I just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And so that kind of helps, yeah.
So inspiring.
Yeah.
So inspiring.
We also have to learn from our failures to actually be a better version as a comedian or anyone else. And from this, I wonder, like, what's your vision for your own development, not only as a comedian, but also for the podcast and also for the whole 7 million bikes
empire.
Empire, exactly.
I don't know. Yeah, I should know. I need to get some proper goals. Everything's been quite organic so far and happened quite naturally. So I've not really sat down and thought, like, this is where I want to be. I'm just kind of letting it play out naturally, right? I guess if you really think about it, we talked about it in the beginning, we're providing English language entertainment. So not just for expats, we obviously have a massive Vietnamese population who are speaking English. They want Western style entertainment. They want comedy shows. So I guess to be the number one English language entertainment provider in Vietnam, I don't know where that's going to go, though. I don't have any like kind of specific goals or what that means or any numbers of like this amount of shows or this or that. Just like keep doing what we're doing, keep doing it well.
Then ask it this way: what's kind of the purpose behind what you are doing? Like all of them.
Provide entertainment. I just enjoy making people laugh. I enjoy meeting new people. It's kind of one of these things, like you realize you have a skill and then you're like, oh, well, I might as well use this skill, you know? So you kind of realize, oh, I can organize events. Like a lot of the things I do, I don't overthink it or even really think about it until after. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I put on that event. That was pretty cool. Oh yeah, that took skill to do that. You know, like that management, organization, promotion, marketing, all of these things. I don't really think about it at the time. And then afterwards, and then I'm like, oh yeah.
It's really inspiring though. Like you are not the first person I meet that who is like really this doer personality. You just like get the idea and then go for it. And I'm kind of the opposite. I don't know about you, Tue-Si, but I always have to sit on it a little bit before I make that decision to go for it.
So my wife and I were the polar opposite, and she's like you, and that provides a nice balance. But I am a doer, and I think that can be good and bad, because sometimes I just do it without thinking. Whereas if I have an idea, she'll be like, well, what about this? And have you thought about that? And then this. And so she really admits that she will be held back from doing things because she overthinks it. And so many people are like that. And it's called paralysis by analysis. So you analyze things so much, you paralyze yourself because you're just like, you think too much and then don't do anything. Whereas I'm like the complete opposite, where I don't think at all and just do it. Thankfully, so far it's worked out, but maybe one time I'll get tripped up and fuck up.
But so who is around you to help, like, except your wife, obviously? Like, who is part of 7 million bikes that is providing you a support system?
It's pretty much just me and my wife. I mean, I've had so much support though from people. You know, Devin Gray, I have to give so much to him. Devin Gray is a comedian who's just recently moved to Germany and got engaged. So congratulations, Devin. He's just given so much support over the last year. Tommy Pruczynski as well. These guys have just, Wayne, Wanye West. There's some people within the scene have just given me so much support. I couldn't actually probably be where I am or doing what I'm doing. I would have probably given up a long time ago without the support of people like Devin, Tommy.
So in the near future, do you want to bring in people into 7 million bikes, or do you still want to be just a...
No, I'm dying to. That's the next step. I need to... The plan next year is to start hiring some staff. You know, everything with the lockdown this year has thrown everything up in the air. So next year, I want to bring in like someone to do more of the, as you will know, the editing and outsource and things like this. And at the start of the year, I was starting to outsource stuff, and then the lockdown all happened, so it all went back. So one of the biggest things with 7 Million Bikes now, I'm actually making podcasts for other people now.
I see.
Wow.
So I'm now onto my third podcast client. So I'm now making...
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. That's mostly the biggest kind of thing in terms of like as a business, is making podcasts for other people.
I'm really curious, like how do you gain the energy to do all of this? That's one. And then how do you manage the stress with all of this? I'm looking at what you are doing, hearing all of this, and like I will probably break down and then get the burnout like after a month or something. How do you tackle the stress, and then how you gain your balance back, let's say, to do, or whether you have a balance, that's another question.
I have no idea the answer to that question. One, I don't find it stressful, I guess, is the biggest thing. I just love it. I've kind of always had a lot of energy, so I'm just naturally quite I couldn't do any of this without my wife, though. Like literally I couldn't do any of it without her. She provides the balance, she provides the support, she picks me up when I am stressed or when I am down. She always provides a balance to what I'm doing. When I'm too high, she'll bring me down, and when I'm too low, she'll pick me up, you know. So
she's the pole.
Definitely.
That's amazing to hear, to have such a nice support.
Support system is very important. I mean, like, shout out to your wife.
Exactly. But you got to try and find balance in everything. One of the things that helped me was I had a sales job and I did a Tony Robbins course where you focus on internal locus of control. I can tell I have a very strong internal locus of control, so nothing external affects really too much what I do, because I know that it's all about what I do and how I react to situations. So once you have a strong internal locus of control, it makes everything much, much easier.
Yeah.
And I learned that really from like doing the sales job, 100% commission. So you're entirely reliant on, yourself for your income. And so that manifests its way in things like one of my comedy shows. I had a photographer booked, which was like a big deal. And before I got there, the photographer messaged me and he's like, the guy that's here says that there's no show tonight. And I'm like, no, there's absolutely a show tonight. We have it every month at the same venue in the same spot. And I get there, the manager hadn't shown up. It was the delivery guy was there who didn't speak English. There was no aircon on, no electricity. The cash register was locked. There was people were already there. The bar wasn't set up at all for the show. So again, you could show up and be like, fuck, and you get angry and all of that. But I just have a very positive mindset that I'm like, okay, what do we do? All right, Wayne, can you help this? Can you do it? So I ended up like pouring pints. The cash register was locked. Oh, the owner was in Nya Bay, so he was like an hour away, and I'm calling him and I'm like, the manager's not showing up. So I'm having to use my own money. I had to go send someone to go and buy soda water because they didn't have soda water in. But you're just kind of like, okay, so how do we solve this problem, right? Not like dwell on like what's gone wrong. Okay, how do we solve it? So right, quick, get the aircon on, change the seats. You go buy soda water. I used to be a barman. I'll pour pints, and we ended up just having an unbelievable show, and there's just no problem. So if you just have that solution-focused, positive mindset, nothing's really a problem, right?
I love it.
That's an important message, I think, for the listeners, for us as well, to remind ourselves that we always have control over our circumstances. I mean, we cannot...
you have control of your emotions. You control how you feel about a situation. And it's not easy, but I know.
I managed the tour company in Toronto for a long time with all the international schools, and that's how we train people. Like, it's just your circle of influence, and then just be solution focused. Like, because something is going to happen on the tour, like, bus is going to break down, some, vendors are not going to show up. You show up at the hotels and none of the rooms are ready, and you have to deal with it. You have to entertain. You have to be like, okay, it's part of the show. The show must go on, and it's everything you just said is like textbook tour guide training. Just get things going.
I also want to understand, how do you deal with the fear when you start something new? We all have some fear when there is something new that we haven't done before, and then you have done so many of that. already. I'm asking you this so the listeners can also get some inspiration of, they can get over that fear and then start their own things as much as you did.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
Like, literally, you just have to do it. I'm not making that like that's easy. Like I talked about, like me getting on stage for the first time took me 7 years to do comedy. It's terrifying and it's difficult. But at the end of the day, you just have to do it, and it's the only way you can get by, really. Yeah.
You have to dare to jump, and then like after that, I think it's consistency. Like once you break the seal, like everything you said, I've been like really inspired.
Yeah, breaking the seal is once I broke the seal of comedy, it's like okay, you just go ahead.
It's a lot
and do
about
it.
that.
Yeah.
Do you feel balanced today?
Yes.
What brings you that joy and that balance?
So I'm 39 now. I'm nearly 40, and I've lived a varied life. I've done loads of different jobs, had ups and downs, and I just feel like balanced in my life. And man, this sounds so like kind of cheesy, but being married, like you kind of feel complete. Like I love my wife, and we've been together for nearly 10 years now, and we have a really happy life together. And she also is the source of most of my comedy in terms of she writes my jokes. She's also really, really funny, so she'll tell you herself she wouldn't get on stage, but I often come up with a kernel of an idea or the idea of a joke, and then she'll be like, oh, you should do it like this or you do it like that. And so she's my partner in comedy, my partner in everything. Like she's a amazing person.
For me, it makes sense. All the things that you've said, you do feel balanced because you have this good way of thinking, solution-driven type of thinking. So when there is a problem, you're more focused on how do I solve that problem, not into the delving into the negativity. So it makes sense for me. You don't have to be like doing 5 hours of yoga every day. 5 hours of meditation. You don't
get me wrong. Yoga does help, and if that's what finds your balance. I don't have time for yoga. I would love to do it.
But you have those systems in place that makes you that makes you balance, and that's what we want to know. And that's perfect.
And relationships as well with everyone. Like I mentioned way earlier, I still talk to my best friends from back home. Mm-hmm. I'm always on bloody Messenger. I'm always reaching out to people. I love being around people, talking to them, making relationships, being on your podcast, talking to you guys. I love it. And you thrive on that and you get energy from it. If you're an introvert, then you're listening to this and you're like, I don't want to be around people. I'm obviously not an introvert. So it's different for everyone. But that's part of it as well.
Yeah.
I understand.
Also knowing your energy and managing it that way. And for you, if that's what brings you energy, then that's what you're going to do. Reaching out to people.
Thank you for this opportunity to be able to explain to people, whoever is listening, maybe a bit more about me, because I think a lot of people, like you've kind of said, maybe see my name or see me doing comedy or whatever, but they don't really know who the real me is.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the evolution too, because I've been very much outside the expat community for the past 2.5 years that I've been here, but I can see increasingly how you are becoming the centerpiece of the expat community. It's especially in terms of entertainment.
So just one of the last questions, how do you want to be remembered at the end of your life?
Oh my God, what?
Maybe you should lie down for that question.
Yeah, Jesus. How do you want to be remembered at the end of your life? Well, I want to live forever. No, I'm kidding.
Forever young.
I mean, just as a good person, right? That's how you want to be remembered, as just a good person. That's all. Simple.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be more complicated than this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's your chance, actually, to talk to the audience, talk to the universe. Where you want to do? You want to take 7 million bikes or anything related to what you want?
Go ahead.
We've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, and now you want me to... I've said it all. I don't have anything more to say. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, or anything else that you want to project to 2022? Just give us your... if you want.
So anyone listening, come to shows, get out. I know it's difficult right now as well. We're still all coming to terms with the new normal. If you can, come to a show, support it. Support anyone who's doing comedy. Go to a comedy show, listen to the podcast. The biggest thing is just getting people to do stuff, so just go out, enjoy a show, have fun.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
You also do a creative networking event every month, is that right?
We've been doing it online, and then there's going to be our first one next week in person.
come. So that's great.
We'll just go, the website, 7millionbikes.com. There's the calendar of events is on there. Go on Facebook, Instagram.
It's great to focus on the physical aspect, like all those events. I'm really excited for everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much. No, thank you. It makes me feel so good. It may come across as like overconfident or too cocky, which I don't try and be at all. And I definitely have my moments where I'm like, fuck this shit. I'm not doing another comedy show. I'm not doing any more of this stuff. Like, you have your down moments, and then when comments like yours right now, honestly, they make my day, my week. I will not forget what you've just said to me. That stuff keeps me going. I remember when someone tells me you inspired me, or you've motivated me, or you're this, and then that's like, man, you got to keep doing what you're doing, because like it's like that's the food that fuels you, really. So thank you.
Same.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Niall.
Thank you.
So happy to have you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys at an event and a show soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next week. Thanks, Niall.
Cheers.
All good.
Thank you, Niall.
Thank you so much for listening to Creators in Vietnam. If you like this episode, become a part of our mission to inspire others by leaving a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcast. Also by sharing this episode with your friends on social media. This one small act can truly make a difference in someone's life. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and see you next time.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease, and I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you are listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.